Hello, everybody, and let's talk about the gods. So, first things first, I have a couple of things I wanted to talk about today. I have two main points in general. So, first off, since it's Thorstalk, we're going to be talking about the gods. So, something that I think is really important to talk about is not believing everything you see. The internet is full of misinformation, and it's also full of people who have no clue what they're talking about. But on the other hand, the internet is also full of people who believe nothing. Which, if you believe that this is the way to live, then go ahead and do what you're going to do. But I think it's very important to look at trusted sources and to do research on the things that you see. This does not mean to not trust anything. You definitely should be able to believe things. Practically just try not to be gullible. And you may be thinking, what does this have to do with the gods? Well, Odin is a main figure of knowledge. And Odin is known for seeking this knowledge out. So, as a heathen myself, it's only right that I do the same. Now, I think it's very important to be wise in certain aspects. You never know when you may need certain knowledge about something, especially if you do business or you're going to school. Being knowledgeable is very important. And this ties into my second point about Odin. Another thing Odin is known for is gathering the knowledge of the runes. So, the reason we know the meaning of the runes is since Odin hung himself on an ash tree for 9 days, and I believe 9 nights. I'm not exactly sure if it was 9 days and 9 nights or just 9 days. But not only did Odin hang himself on a tree with a spear for 9 days, Odin also gave his eye to drink from Mimir's well. Now, Mimir's well is also known as the Well of Knowledge, and Mimir protects this well. Long story short, to get a drink of the well, you need to sacrifice something. And in a symbolic way, Odin gives an eye, which obviously you see from, to see more. Since you would think you can see less without the eye, but now Odin can see twice as good now that he has all this information or knowledge. But really, the message here is that to get what you need in life, and especially for information, you always need to sacrifice something. Now, I do not think Odin's telling you to give your eye for a job, but the point is, symbolically, you're going to need to sacrifice some things to get where you want to be. And usually these things that you sacrifice are something that feels very important to you. Obviously, an eye is going to feel extremely important since now you can only see out of one eye. But in the end, this importance is only a mental thing. Odin did not need both of his eyes to see well. And as I stated before, he actually sees better after giving his eye. Now, I brought the Poetic Edda with me since I have a couple of things that I want to bring up from here. And I'd like to read it to you straight from the book. So, I find it very interesting that Odin talks about how one should never be too wise. Now, this does not mean that you literally should not be too wise, but the point that Odin is trying to get across is that the more intelligent you are, the more painful your life can be. Like, think about it. We as humans are more intelligent than some other species, and we get depressed about life. We have sadness, whereas other animals just think about eating and sleeping and surviving. So, from the chapter Sayings of the High One, verse 54, Odin says, averagely wise a man ought to be, never too wise, for those men have the best sort of lives, who know a fair amount. Averagely wise a man ought to be, never too wise, for a man's heart is seldom cheerful, if he who owns it is too wise. Averagely wise a man ought to be, never too wise. Let no one know his fate beforehand, for he'll have the most carefree spirit. Now, there's a little bit to unpack here. I did just read 3 lines, so let's go with the first one. Averagely wise a man ought to be, never too wise, for those men have the best sort of lives, who know a fair amount. Now, I think the purpose of this line is to convey the message that I priorly stated. If you know too much, you have more to be sad about. Almost like how they say ignorance is bliss. Not that you should be ignorant to everything, but that being somewhat ignorant will keep you happy. The second verse again states, averagely wise a man ought to be, never too wise, for a wise man's heart is seldom cheerful, if he who owns it is too wise. Again, I think this just means that people who are too smart have issues with their intelligence. Like you hear about mad scientists, they're mad since they're so smart and they really do not know how to live with other people since everything about them is their intelligence. It's almost like a double-edged sword. And then the third line states, averagely wise a man ought to be, never too wise. Let no one know his fate beforehand, for he'll have the most carefree spirit. Now, I think this one is the deepest of them all, especially since it's very true, oftentimes. Not always is this line true, but it tends to be most often the case. I think practically what it means is if you know a ton about your future, right, you get readings, and then you tell people these things, say they're good things that you see to happen, you may end up being so excited about it that you just do not do it. Which is why I know some readers say not to tell other people their readings. I know from the readers that I've gone to, many of them tell you not to tell other people since it's a very personal thing. And I've also seen that for some other heathens, this is the case too. They believe that their fate is a very personal thing and it's not to be shared, whether they've read the book or not. But I think whether you're heathen or just spiritual or whatever it is, if you know things about what you're going to do, you probably should not be telling too many people about it for many different reasons, you know. As I said, one reason could be, like it stated in the book, you're too carefree, so then you just do not end up doing it. Another reason could be, you know, you tell people you're going to be rich and then they start stalking your house or something like that. When they see that you have money, they rob you, whatever. Not these examples exactly, but, you know, these are things that could happen. It's all possible. Now, the second thing I wanted to bring up is not exactly religious or really has anything to do with Norse heathenry, but I think it's very important for those spiritual people and other heathens slash, you know, other religions that are spiritual as well. As I said in my last video, I'm a soft polytheist, meaning I'm not hard into religion at all. I'm more spiritual. So what I wanted to bring up was about how we come to different lives acting different in all of them. So what I mean by this is you could have been a warrior in your past life, right? Whatever time period, it does not matter. You could have been a very strong warrior, very spiritual, and very strong emotionally and physically and all that. But then you come to this life, right? You're born in modern times and you know, you may be disabled and you may be depressed and you may be feeling like pulling the switch on life. Now, this is all for a reason. But not only that, I think it does not have much to do with your higher self. Now, for those of you that have not heard of the term higher self, what it means is what you are right now is not all of your spirit. There's most of your spirit up in, if you want to call it heaven, or if you're a heathen, Valhalla, or any of the other realms, Helheim, or wherever it is, right? Most of your spirit is there on the other side. And another part of your spirit is here, living right now. And this part of your soul could be called the lower self or something of that sort. But your lower self is not, as I said before, all of your higher self, meaning that your energy levels here are not going to be the same as your higher self, which is also why it's called the higher self in its own right. Now, the higher self already is likely to be at a higher vibration than your lower self. Now, that all varies depending on your overall vibration. But I would say most people here probably have a higher vibration for their higher selves than their lower selves. Anyway, my main point being that your vibration here is not even half of your higher self. So there really is no point in being depressed about that. And this has nothing to do with depressed people. I'm just talking about people who are very spiritual and want to raise their vibrations. And maybe you have issues with raising your vibrations, or you feel like you can never get to the place that you want to be. And maybe you feel like this has something to do with your higher self, that your higher self is not at the level that you want to be either. Since maybe you're not making the distinction between who you are now and the higher self. But the fact that you're thinking this much, the fact that you're this self-reflective may mean that your higher self is extremely high vibrational. I just wanted to bring up this point for all those people that may feel like this, just to bring comfort to those people. Maybe let them know that your higher self is a very high vibrational spirit. But also, as I said before, the fact that you may be in a pickle in this life, that does not mean too much about your higher self. Especially if you think about it this way, the fact that you're struggling in this life may mean that you are a higher vibrational spirit, since maybe it's more of a selflessness. Look at many of the prophets that we have on earth, like Jesus, for one. Jesus was crucified, and Jesus went through tons of torment and tribulations. This does not mean that he's a lower vibrational spirit. It does not mean that he did something bad and then now he's paying for it, that it's karma. Could that be the case? Perhaps. But the fact that he's doing this and the fact that he did it for other people shows that he's a higher vibrational spirit. It shows that his vibrations are higher than who he may have been here. And the fact that he was still a higher vibrational person here shows how high his vibrations are. And same thing with other people. Even Gandhi. Gandhi may not have been a prophet, but he was very similar in the sense that he was spiritual. He was a martyr, and that he really was here for the good of humanity and for his country. He wanted peace. The world is going to be how the world is, and oftentimes the earth does not like people of high vibrations. Maybe they're jealous. Maybe they just want to tear you apart. And this actually brings me into my second point. My second point being yin and yang. I think yin and yang does not get enough attention. And I may not be using it in the way that it's intended to be, but I think just the symbol itself is almost perfect for almost every spiritual explanation. Now, the yin and yang, obviously most people probably have seen it before. If you have not, this is the yin and yang. The yin and yang perfectly describes everything. Now, if you think about it, there is good and bad, right? Now, if there was only good, how do we know it's bad? Right? There's no such thing as bad. How do we know that good is good? Right? If everything is good, is that even a good thing? Now, on the opposite side, if everything is bad, how do we know that bad is bad? Is bad good? You cannot compare one hand if you only have one, and if there's no other hands in the universe. There's only one hand in the universe. You cannot compare it to anything. This is the only hand you know. Would you even call it a hand, since it's the only hand? That's why there's the yin and yang, the good and the bad, the light and the dark, the nothing and the something. And especially that point right there, nothing and something. If you really think about everything in life, some say that God or Odin, whatever you want to call it, that highest being that's there for all of us, the one, spirit, whatever you want to call it, is one, and we're all a part of that, meaning everything is one, right? But if everything is one, what is everything? Is everything then nothing? And say everything is nothing, say there's nothing. Nothing in itself is something. The thought that we can think of nothing is something. And there you go, yin and yang, the dark side, nothing. But there's that little white circle that's something. And then in the something, everything, there's nothing. So I just wanted to bring that point up, that this is the paradox of life. Everything is nothing, but nothing is also everything. And I assure you, I did not smoke before talking about this, even though this may sound like weed talk, and I did not smoke before this. But I think that's a very interesting point. The last thing I wanted to bring up is the point of life. Now, what is the point of life? I think there's a couple of answers to this. Off the bat, I would say, if you want a quick answer, the point of life is technically whatever you want it to be. Yeah, maybe you have some issues in your past lives and you came here to resolve that one. Perhaps you just want to live life. You want to experience something else beside what is on the other side. There's the point of life. Now, if you want to talk about, the spirit, Odin, God, Allah, whatever you want to call it, if you want to know the grand meaning of life, if you listen to many near-death experiences, one of the main things that everybody talks about is that God, or as we say, Odin, just wants us to be good to each other. All Odin cares about is the way that we interact with people while we're alive. This, I do not think, is the grand point of life, which is why I say that the point of life is whatever you really make of it. But what Odin cares about is how we act with one another, is how we treat one another, how good or bad we are to one another. But also, if you're talking about your point of life, why are you here? Obviously, that's for you to decide. This ties into yin and yang again, since Odin cares about how we interact with each other. There are many near-death experiences that say that we come here and we may get tortured or killed or assaulted or other traumatic things happen to us, and we signed up for it. We said, I want this person to be in my life and to be an abuser to me and to stalk me and to eventually kill me. Why would we sign up for this? That's another question in itself. Maybe we think it's fun on the other side, and here it feels horrible. But after we die, we laugh about it. And then we say, okay, all right, you killed me, now I'm going to kill you next time. It's like a video game. Maybe it's for experience, for the lesson. We did it to someone else. Well, we do not know how it feels. We've been killing people for most of our lives. Now we need to understand what it's like to be killed and why we should not do it, which would feed into Odin's wish for us to treat each other good. We need to understand why we need to treat each other well. If we've never, again, this is like yin and yang, if we've never experienced good, we've only experienced doing bad things, how can we know what good is? How do we know to treat each other well? How do we know to be nice to each other if we've only understood bad and negativity? So we need to experience it. We need a life of torment to come back in the next life and understand how to be good to people. Now, my message is not condoning being bad to people. That's not the point of my video. The point of my video is to show that the reasons these things happen is for you to understand it. I think we are meant to eventually understand the other side from here, but right now that's not exactly what's important. Since we come from there and we obviously forget all those things for a reason, everything happens for a reason. If we as spirits wanted to come back and remember things, we would, which is why certain people come back and remember how they died and who they were and where they were, and it all checks out. So I think the most important thing, the most important lesson of this video is really focus on your path. Do not tell people too much. Do not be gullible. And remember the yin and yang. There's two sides to everything. There's the good side and the bad side, which in itself is technically all good, but technically all bad. And as I've said in some of my other videos, there is no such thing as good or bad. It's all perception. Everything is perception. So just stay focused on your life, not in a selfish way. Stay focused on your path and be the best you can. Do the best things you can. And remember to treat others very well. Treat others with the respect that everybody gets until they earn more respect, if that's the way that you see it. And if someone did you wrong, just wish them to learn from their mistakes. Wish them the best. Since what goes around comes around. You wish people bad, you're going to get bad in return. So just stay on your paths. And everybody have a good night. I hope you liked this video. If you did like this video, I would appreciate a like. And if you like my channel, please subscribe. I also have a TikTok channel where I mostly post videos. And I'll see you next Thursday.